Brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello and welcome to the latest live episode of Wrestling with Johners, episode 362, and a wonderful guest for a Wednesday evening. You can see him on the right-hand side of the screen there, in the middle of his UK and European tour, none other than the V guy, VAUGHN Vertigo. VAUGHN, awesome to have you on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. I was admiring the theme music you had coming in. It was getting the Joe Hendry's theme song out of my head.
Absolutely. Well, I went for a little bit of a Jimi Hendrix vibe, to be honest with you, but one of my favorite guitarists of all time. But awesome to have you on the show. And of course, we're quite lucky to have you. You've only been in the UK a couple of days, but how's your stay been in the UK so far then, VAUGHN?
It's been good. I mean, I arrived yesterday morning.
Wow.
Wrestled at Riot Cabaret last night and then slept for like 10, 11 hours. And now I finally feel like there's no jet lag. I feel like I'm more rested, but you know, it's still a little jet lag. So I'm hoping tomorrow I'll be like 100%. I feel like 80% today.
Mate, I'm so full of admiration that you got straight off a plane and straight to the Clapham Grand and wrestled a match last night against Nico Angelo, which we will get into. We'll talk about all of that. But of course, we are live with the V Guy. So if you want to get in touch, we are live across Twitch, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Get in touch, send your questions through, and we'll do our very best during the course of this interview to answer every single one. But of course, recent guests, and of course, it's my first interview of the month of May. Of course, it is because it's the 1st of May. But April was a busy month for Johners, and it started with Flash Morgan Webster. Almost a month ago to the day. Flash was an awesome guest. Had him on for about 90 minutes. Talking about his wonderful career, NXT UK, the scene in South Wales, the subculture, and all that good stuff. A couple of weeks ago, we had the guys, Lou and Shotty from Sovereign Pro, ahead of their next show, False Idol, which is at Bank Holiday Monday, May the 6th. And that's going to be a great show. And last week, I had 3 live interviews. I've only just recovered from conducting all 3. But we had Josh Folds of the reality series, which was named after him, the underdog, Josh Must Win. He was on the show last Monday. Wednesday, we had Joe Blazer on the show. A fantastic conversation with the current Future Shock champion. And of course, Friday was my most recent guest with the kid without fear, Danny Black. Today, it's all about this guy here. And the most recent promo shot, which kind of in all of your glory there, VAUGHN. But let's start with last night then, because straight off a plane, straight to London, straight to the Clapham Grand, and it was this match here. VAUGHN Vertigo versus Nico Angelo kicking off the show. But first of all, I know Riot Cabaret, you're no stranger to Riot Cabaret. I think you've maybe performed for them once or twice before. Tell us a bit about your kind of history and journey with Riot Cabaret, and I bet it was good to be back in the Clapham Grand.
It definitely was. They're definitely a company that when they popped up, I immediately, expressed my interest to work for them. And just, dates didn't line up, things didn't line up. And eventually last October, I was able to get in there for a 4-way with Robbie X, Danny Black, and Joe Blazer. And that was my first time experiencing the Clapham Grand. And it really has this like the new PWG venue vibe, and everybody's so loud, and the lights they have like a great light setup, and just the energy in that room was just incredible. So obviously, as you show right there. So obviously to get back in there last night was a really, really big deal to me, and especially to get in there with Nico Angelo, somebody that we wrestled each other in multi-mans, but we never got a chance to have that singles match. So last night we got to go in there and kick the show off, which was the best spot
absolutely and kicking the show off, opening the show last night at Riot Cabaret's most recent show, and like you say, a first time one-on-one encounter between yourself and the man with a black heart of gold. But I know you said you've worked him in multi-man matches before, but getting on the plane, kind of your journey from Canada to the UK, that must have been at the forefront of your mind, was a little bit of excitement knowing you were going to be stepping in the ring with Nico Angelo almost as soon as you stepped off the plane.
Yeah, definitely. I obviously, dealing with jet lag, I was a little worried about it. I was able to squeak in like an hour nap in the afternoon. I did not sleep on the plane. I can't sleep on planes. But that hour nap like got me through it. But as soon as the match was over, I could start to feel like, okay, I need to sleep.
Yeah, and I can only imagine that with your in-ring style and Nico's style, I bet they meshed and gelled really, really well. What was the chemistry like between the two of you in that ring last night?
It was good. It was really good. We had good chemistry before with the little stuff we did at Attack and I think it was Southwest Wrestling. But Nico, obviously, he's put on quite a bit of weight. Like he's a different animal than he was, in 2019 or 2021. So yeah, like it was a lot more of me getting my ass thrown around than high flying stuff. But he still hit a shooting star off the top to my head. So
I've got some stills here from a fan's video.
Yep.
Over the top rope there. I think that was possibly the shooting star you were referring to, and I think that was maybe a split leg moonsault of your own there. But you've been coming over to the UK for a number of years now. In my research, I've noticed that you've been coming over to the UK maybe from 2017, and I don't think you've missed a year, with the exception of maybe 2021, when, of course, nobody was traveling everywhere. But you did manage to get a bit of a tour at the beginning of 2020, and then, of course, 22, 23, and, of course, 2024. But what was it that first inspired you to want to leave your home country, try different scenes, and like I say, try out the UK? Because this is almost your home away from home nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. What happened is that I had just gotten out of college for television broadcasting. I was doing an internship with Global News out of Toronto. And it came to a point where it was, if I wanted to pursue television, my only option in television is that I would need to work weekends and evenings. So if I wanted to commit to that, I probably wasn't going to be able to wrestle. So I kind of, I thought about it and I was like, well, okay, hold on. I know some contacts in the UK. What if I just go out there and see what happens? And I knew Ollie Peace from WrestleForce. We connected through YouTube a long time ago. And he got me hooked up on like DOA, and I think it was drop kicks. So I went over and I wrestled Kip Sabian in my first match. Then I wrestled Elton Prince, as he's known now, and Paul Robinson. It was just like this like quick like week tour with like all these great matches, and like it revived my love for wrestling, and it just confirmed that I needed to do this full time and not worry about television right now.
Yeah, absolutely. From your Twitter, where you show your renewed Canadian passport, and you mentioned that you've been doing this half your lifetime. But let me ask you, when you're booking your own tour outside of your own country, there must be a lot of logistics and planning involved putting something like this together. Explain some of the planning that you have to put in before you even step on the plane to go over to the UK in the first place, Vaughn.
I mean, a lot of it is paying attention to the scene and what's going on. Like I made it a point to, like, since 2017 because when I showed up in 2017, I didn't know how vast the scene was. And obviously that was at a point where the scene was like at its highest, maybe like 2014, 2015.
The hottest
There's
scene
so
ever,
much going on. And I didn't know all that was happening. So when I showed up, I learned, through like following Kip and following Paul Robinson, all these guys I wrestled, I was like, oh my God, there's so much happening. I need to know everything about this. So once I started to like pay attention to the scene, I started figuring out where everything was. I started figuring out the geography of where everything in England is. And then I come back for a second tour. I'm able to get on IPW and stuff like that. And yeah, it really just kind of grew from there. But in terms of logistics, like there's so much planning that goes into it. And I'm a bit insane. A lot of people will come over and, they'll stay in like London, or they'll stay in Cardiff, or they'll stay in Scotland. Like I made it a point to be like, well, what's running? What's the most beneficial thing to me? If there's a show happening in Scotland, I mean, I'll figure out a way to get there. If they're able to, get my train up there, that's awesome. And most of the time, it worked out for me that they were able to find a way, like I could jump in a car or something to get up there. So I'm only ever in one place for like, a day, 3-4 days at a time. But it's worked out because now I've been able to move around so much. Yeah,
absolutely. And I've had Scotty Too Hot, Scott Garland, on the show twice. Yeah. And, since leaving WWE, he was a massive advocate of planning and booking his own tours and coming over to the UK as often as possible. And, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, Europe, and he would do it all himself. So when I saw that you were doing your own tours, it kind of reminded me of what Scott was doing after leaving WWE. And I mean, it must be quite liberating, and there must be an awful sense of freedom knowing that you can book your own tours and be your own boss essentially when it comes to your wrestling career, especially outside of your own country.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much dependent on the tour. There's been cases where, they said, "Hey, we want to bring you out to Denmark," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm not going to go to Denmark for just the weekend. Like, just fly me to Denmark, and then I'll figure out the rest from there. Like, I'll make a tour out of it." Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you, I don't think there's a huge percentage of talent anywhere in the world that kind of really see the massive benefits of leaving their own country as often as you have, to kind of learn different cultures, different styles, a different scene. What do you think you've learned the most about the various tours you've done over the last 6 or 7 years? I'm guessing it's kind of been a big learning curve for you, but you've learned a lot and you've grown a lot through them tours. How do you think it's benefited you the most?
I think it's benefited me the most by kind of trusting myself to bet on myself. Like, where I was in Canada in 2016, 2017 was not nearly where I am now. Like, I was pretty much exclusively in multi-mans and tag matches and, scraping to get on shows. So that's why I ended up here, because I wanted the challenge of wrestling new people. So yeah, I made that point to come over here and just try to learn from people that were better than me and just wrestle new people. And I got addicted to it. Like I ended up being up here pretty much every like 6 months. Like, this is my 10th tour now.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know that you've tried to get over at least twice a year for most of them years that you've been coming over to the UK. But I think coincidentally, the last time you were here was probably about October last year.
Yep.
And the very last show on that tour was for Progress, wasn't it? At the Electric Ballroom, if I'm not mistaken, their Halloween show. I believe that's correct. And I think I was actually present at that show. Well, I know I was, because I was working the Progress merch stand, and we had a brief exchange. I said hi,
Yes,
but
right.
I saw your match, and I thought, wow, and it was an incredible match as well. It was a real stacked lineup in that four-way. I think it was for the Warriors title, but held by Casey Navarro. You've had a bit of a history with Progress over the years, haven't you? And both in the UK and in Toronto, whenever Progress has been over there, and crossover shows with Defy and with Smash. But Progress, is kind of intertwined with your journey over the last 6 or 7 years, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing I was involved in was 2016. They came over when everything was really, really hot. That was like the era of like Mark Andrews and Mark Haskins and Zack Sabre Jr. And they all came over in 2016 to do a show at Smash. I think I did the pre-shows for those, if I'm not mistaken. I remember doing a Zack Sabre Jr. seminar for sure, which was a lot of fun. And that's kind of my introduction to Progress was from that. So when I started going to the UK, I was like, oh, this is a company I need to be a part of. But it was very hard to get on at the time. I was doing crew and it just wasn't working out. It wasn't until after the pandemic that I got the opportunity, at least in England, to work there. And I think I worked in Joe Lando in my first match.
Yeah, and let me ask you, going back to October when you were part of that multi-man, and you've had maybe a good handful, maybe 6 or 7 matches for Progress over the years, but that would have been your very first one inside the Electric Ballroom, and of course that is the spiritual home of Progress. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of Progress. And when you were crewing, you may have crewed at the Electric Ballroom, but that would have been your first opportunity to work there. What was it like for you?
It was great. It was exactly what I expected from it. It's a great crowd, great venue, just a great atmosphere. And obviously getting in there with somebody I'm very close with Brent Banks, and somebody who's absolutely incredible, like Casey Navarro, and Jack Bandicoot, who's absolutely killing it right now. It was the perfect scenario for me to get that opportunity at the Electric Ballroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a killer match. But let's talk about the dates. Let's talk about your tour then. Obviously, we spoke about your match at Riot Cabaret last night against Nico Angelo, one of the very best wrestlers in the UK. He's really exploded all over the scene in the UK over the last 12 months or so. But the very next date we have to talk about is this one here, in just 2 days' time, Friday, the 3rd of May, the Pleasance Theatre in London. And it's for Restival. And you're going to be part of the, the Restival Smoz starring VAUGHN Vertigo. So what do you know about that? I don't know if you don't know too much about what that match is going to entail, I think we all know what a schmoz is. But give us a bit of insight. Do you know what's going to happen, or what your role might consist of on Friday the 3rd at Festival?
I'm not entirely sure how much details I can give out here, because I've been sent a script to read for this, and this is very interesting, I will say. I will say that this came about because Eddie Dennis was like, "Hey, you should try to get on this Festival thing," and I assumed it was just wrestling. But turns out it's more of a theater production. But honestly, when I read the script, I was like, "Oh, but this is interesting. This is really interesting." So I'm actually really looking forward to Friday for that.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it will take you out of your comfort zone or not, but it will be certainly something a little bit different and entertaining for you and for the fans, I'm sure. And then we look ahead to this one here, and it's going to be over in Denmark. And this, I believe, is the 11th of May, if I'm not mistaken, for Body Slam Pro Wrestling. And first of all, I want to congratulate them, because I understand that it is going to be a sold-out show. So congratulations to Body Slam Pro Wrestling over in Denmark. And this is the match here. The VAUGHN Vertigo Open International Invitational. Now that's a mouthful, and I didn't trip over my words, so I'm quite pleased with myself there. But what can you tell us about that? I suppose it is what it says it is on the tin or on the poster, but quite an interesting matchup. I don't know if you're familiar with any of those talents that you're going to be working, but that looks like a fun match nonetheless, and a sold-out show for Body Slam.
Yeah, let me say how that came about. So the first time I wrestled for Body Slam was it was my first match back in Europe in 2022. I was supposed to wrestle Alice Inc. She ended up getting COVID, so she wasn't able to make the show. So the night before, the promoter's like, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know what to do for you through the show. And I said, oh, just do the VAUGHN Vertigo Invitational, which is something I did back home, where it was just like, I put up these graphics together with like a bunch of people on it, like, anybody from Michael Cera to, like the most ridiculous options, Jimmy Wang Yang or whatever, just saying like anybody can show up and wrestle me. So I did that at Body Slam. And not only that, the promoter had a $10 Canadian bill with them. So I said, oh, I'll put 10 Canadian dollars on the line. Easy. So the ref like held it up and everything. So that was my first match in Body Slam. I lost 10 Canadian dollars. So when I came back, I did a triple threat and put 20 Canadian dollars on the line. So I think on Saturday, I'll be putting 40 Canadian dollars on the line in a four-way.
Let's hope you're not out of pocket by the end of this tour, VAUGHN.
I hope not. Yeah, they'll come to merch and buy something with it, hopefully.
Absolutely. And then the following day, we have this one here, Attack Pro Wrestling, a company I know you know very well. You're no stranger to Attack. Saturday, the 11th of May, at the Cathays Community Centre. And hot off the press only about an hour ago, this match here was announced, and it's going to be VAUGHN Vertigo versus Danny Luna. And that's going to be an incredible show, an incredible match. Attack always draw a really, really hot crowd, as you know, because on your various tours over the years, you have performed for Attack on a number of occasions. But that match there, that's worth the price of admission, as they say, VAUGHN, and a great show and a great match to look forward to against Danny Luna.
Definitely. With everything I've done with Attack, I don't think I've wrestled at Cafes. And I know that's like the venue they came up with. So that's actually a really special thing for me to do that. Also getting to wrestle Danny, which is really super cool, because we wrestled each other in the subculture match in Toronto. But to do a singles match would be great. I actually just tweeted that because in Toronto, I threw Danny into a trash can. So I'm probably going to do the exact same thing on Saturday, next Saturday.
Absolutely, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, I'll just bring up the poster again. I'm guessing that just go to Attack's social pages, and I'm sure that the links to get your tickets to that show will be there. But definitely worth getting down there if you can. And then, of course, we've got May the 12th over in Dublin for OTT, Over the Top Wrestling, Spankdown. Renzo Rose puts his NLW championship on the line against yourself. Another great opportunity, another great company, and an opportunity to kind of finish your European tour with a bit of gold, VAUGHN.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, could we all pop for the fact that it's called Spankdown? Pretty hilarious.
I know. I nearly creased when I nearly broke when I said it, but
So
I
funny.
kept my composure.
I'm laughing every time I have to say it. I just cut a promo of saying it. It took me forever to say it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting back for OTT. I was there last year. I wrestled up in Derry, which is Northern Ireland. So technically, I haven't wrestled in Ireland. So now I'm doing Dublin, which is like, the home of OTT, and getting to wrestle Renzo Rose for that No Limits Championship. Really looking forward to that. I've heard that Renzo Rose is absolutely hated, and that he only defends the title against people who are not Irish. So as a Canadian, that works out pretty well for me, right?
Absolutely. And another company you've got a bit of history with, and I think a lot of these companies enjoy it when you're over here in the UK. They obviously trust you and enjoy your style. I love getting you on cards, and amongst them shows, there's a good amount of variety as well, from the acting to the actual wrestling. So you're obviously very, very versatile as a professional wrestler with the number of years you've been in the business. But I'm guessing that as a performer, you enjoy the versatility.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, literally every single tour I've come on, I'm like, well, it's not going to get better than that, and then the next tour just gets better. Like this, I will say, this is the first tour that I haven't had to like really advertise too much, because it's been booked for like a month. Not most of the time, but when I first started coming, I would show up I'd come for like a month, and I had 3 bookings, and I'm like scraping and crawling to try and get extra stuff. I think Brent Banks and I came for 6 weeks once. I think we had 12 bookings, but in the course of, I think we were there for 44 days. We went to 22 shows and wrestled on 12. So that means we were on 10 shows, just hanging out, helping out, just meeting people, networking.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you, I mean, you've done 10 tours, or maybe this is going to be your 10th tour of the UK and Ireland, but and Europe, I should say. But are there any countries or places that you haven't performed in yet that you'd like to, up and down the UK or maybe across Europe? Any that are maybe on your wish list or bucket list of places to perform in?
Definitely. I mean, Spain seems to have a really good scene right now. With Lucha Libre Barcelona. I think there's some stuff going on in Portugal that looks really interesting. I want to go to Norway. That would be really, really fun. Finland as well. I just want to complete Scandinavia, because I think their scene is just it's so interesting and different, because there's they don't really understand wrestling, but when they come to shows, they're drunk and they're wild and like they're sold out. Like it's a really, really fun time. I mean, I want to wrestle pretty much everywhere. So
absolutely, and kind of through doing all these interviews, I'm establishing that there's scenes popping up absolutely everywhere, all over Europe that you wouldn't even consider or imagine. But like I say, Europe is a bustling scene when it comes to pro wrestling. So plenty of places to explore. But we did have somebody that's reached out to us already. Let's have a look. We've got Craig Brown watching us live via YouTube. We need more VAUGHN Vertigo in ICW Scotland. So is that one of the companies you've performed in before? But I mean, Craig is definitely keen to get you back up there.
Yeah, I was up in Scotland. I think I went up there, I think it was 3 or 4 times in 2022. I did a lot of the Fight Club tapings. Fight Club tapings up in Glasgow, And then I think I did like one house show in Air Scotland, which was a lot of fun. But man, their production and like their crowds are incredible. Like, I'm thankful that Leighton Buzzard was able to, tell them to take a look at me and get me up there.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about some of your 2024 highlights now, because you've been in the business for a number of years, but 2024 has already been an absolute banger for you, my friends. And January was pretty hot as well. So we have to talk about this match here. Yourself versus Mustafa Ali. Now, this was on the 19th of January. Now, was this for Defy? What company was this for?
This is for C4 Wrestling in Ottawa.
C4 Wrestling, my apologies. But tell us or describe your reaction when you found out that you was being booked to wrestle and work Mustafa Ali, because like I say, nobody really expected him to be released from WWE in the first place, because he was on tremendous form, and he's been one of the very best cruiserweights / wrestlers in the world for many, many years now, but getting your opportunity to work a match with Mustafa Ali in January, that must always have been on your bucket list, maybe a dream match for you. And for it to become a reality when you first found out, that must have been a cool moment for you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I was his 4th or 5th match out of WWE. For me, it was something I think I kind of manifested, because I think it was back in 2022 when I was coming over to Europe for the first time since the pandemic. I made this like promo video that I put together myself and put it on social media that was shared by Mustafa Ali, and he piped in and said like, "Oh, this is really good," and then that got me like a bunch of followers and a bunch of views, and it helped get me more eyes in Europe because of that. So not knowing the guy, knowing absolutely nothing about him, he went out of his way to, put me over on social media, and it ended up getting me more bookings and more opportunities out of it. Fast forward a little bit to end of 2022, I was doing WWE extra work in Toronto, and he's walking down the hallway, and I'm like, well, I gotta say something. So I pulled him aside and I was like, look, man, like, I really appreciate what you did for me. That really meant a lot to me. Like, I look up to you. You're absolutely one of the best wrestlers in the world, and definitely one of the best WWE. And he took me aside and like spent 10 minutes giving me advice, again, which was, very nice of him for, somebody in his position. So then when he was released from WWE, I went on social media and I said, like, I just kind of, rehashed my story of like, I don't know this guy. He doesn't know me, but he went out of his way to be super nice to me. And like, I think that's just the kind of person he is. And I think that just kind of folded into me finally getting the opportunity to wrestle him as soon as he came out of WWE.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about the match, because I can only imagine, similar to yourself versus Nico last night, yourself versus Mustafa, your styles must have gelled and clicked really, really well in that ring. What do you remember about the match? How well did it go in your mind?
It went good. A lot of it's a blur because a lot of it was very surreal for me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
C4 is a company that I've been working for since I was 18. It was sold out, absolutely rammed with people that night, all there to see him. I think we were like 7th on the card or something. And we went out there and had a great match. He got on the microphone, said some nice things after, which obviously meant a lot to me. It's just one of those things that it's kind of hard to look back on, because I don't know. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I don't want to like think about it too much, because if I go and watch it, I'll look at it differently, So I kind of just want to let it be what it was.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, not to put you on the spot or anything, but what were some of your main takeaways, not just from the match, but from the experience of spending time with him? I mean, I know from when he came over to Progress last year that he was a humble guy, really, really nice to be around, gracious to be around, great with the fans, a pro's pro, professional through and through with the way he conducted himself and everything. But were there any main takeaways from that whole experience with Mustafa Ali that you've kind of used since then?
Honestly, like the biggest takeaway for me is that I kind of realized that like everybody's human, and I say that because, you see somebody on TV, you think, oh, this man's the best. They're an incredible wrestler. They look so confident and everything. And then I'm talking to him and he's telling me that he just came off WWE where everybody was showing up to see Randy Orton and Big Show, and they weren't necessarily there to see him. So now he's showing up on the indies and all these shows are sold out, and like everybody's so excited to see him. And he's like having trouble grasping that he's that popular. And I kind of had to say, like, look, man, like when you were in WWE, we wanted you to be on the indies because you were so good and you weren't getting what you needed out of WWE. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, why am I the one hyping up Mustafa Ali right now? And it just kind of solidified me, like everybody, I don't know how to really describe it, but like, everyone's journey is different, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity. I don't know how else to say it really. It's a hard thing to put across.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to see that he's having so much success on the indies and in TNA. And Let's have a little look, and I want to talk about some UK performers that you've wrestled in 2024 already. And before Mustafa Ali, there was Charles Crowley, wasn't there? And
Yes.
You performed against Charles Crowley. Now, I mean, I've seen Crowley kind of blossom and really thrive as a performer since directly after the pandemic. So August 2021 through till now, and he really has evolved. To this international star that he is, and one of the very, very best performers around. What was your experience of working Charles Crowley? This would have been January also.
Great. I do wish we got the opportunity to do it in a bigger venue with a little more going on. I'm still very happy and thankful we got to do that, but he's somebody that thinks so differently than everybody else because he comes from an acting background.
Yeah.
And so he said something to me that really, really popped me out. This doesn't necessarily go with the story, but he said when he was watching wrestling, when we first got into it, he was looking at Enzo Amore and being like, this guy's the best wrestler in the world. Enzo Amore is the best wrestler in the world, because he understood the acting portion of it, not the wrestling portion of it. And I just thought that's such a neat way to look at wrestling, right? Like, a lot of us watch it for the performance, like for the actual
moves,
action. But he was looking at Enzo Amore and saying, this guy's the best, you know?
I can totally get it.
I'm very thankful to get in with him. He's super, super cool guy. Again, it's just a case of like, we had a good match, but I'd love to do it on a bigger stage.
Absolutely. I'm sure it will.
And I also moonsaulted his monkey, which was a lot of fun.
And let's talk about this match here then. Trent 7 for Destiny. And this was skipping ahead a little bit here, fast forwarding to March the 3rd. And for the Destiny Wrestling World Championship, I think Trent is possibly still the Destiny World Champion. But hell of a match. And Trent is another one of these that really seems to have blossomed as an independent performer since leaving WWE and, taken the independent world of pro wrestling by storm. What was your experience of working with Trent? Because, a different type of wrestler. He's not necessarily fast-paced or high-flying. He hits hard. And everything he does means something. But what was your experience of working Trent 7?
It was awesome. We went into it not knowing we were going to be in the main event because Mustafa was on the show. We assumed he would be the main event. But no, we ended up being the main event. So now we're looking at the card, looking at it, being like, oh, no. So we got to figure out a way to do this to top his match, right? And we really just played into the story of it. At Destiny Wrestling, I've had tag team success, but as a singles wrestler, I had literally lost every single match. So what happened was the week before, I had won like a scramble, like finally get a singles win. And the scramble happens to be for a shot at Trent's title. So I put this promo together, like challenging him for the match and everything. And then we go out there and have this main event where we just did everything. Like I think we killed like 2 referees. We used to, I think I shining wizarded him with a chair. Like it was just, it pushed, it kind of pushed my boundaries and kind of took me out of my comfort zone a little bit. Like I've done main event matches before and everything, but this was so much built on like shenanigans and like story. And it was just so much fucking fun.
So I'm guessing that, typically you're in your comfort zone when it's just a kind of a wrestling match without all the bells and whistles and gimmicks then, Vaughn? Yeah,
definitely. It was just the case of like we had time. We had like 25-30 minutes to do this. Yeah. So we had like a lot to play with. And because we had this story where I was basically this huge underdog going into the match, like we just tried to play with everything we could. And like I'm so happy with like how the crowd reacted. I can't wait for that match to be released. It's definitely one of my favorite matches I've ever had.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to check it out. And then there was this one here, yourself versus Amir Jordan. Yes. And with your 3 Pistols championship on the line for Barry Wrestling. And it was their 100th show. So a bit of a milestone, historic show for them and for yourself. And like I say, a great occasion, a great match, a great opponent. But with everything said, with the occasion and the enormity of it all, what are your recollections of facing Amir Jordan with your championship on the line?
It was good. I was on the very first Bear Wrestling show. I've probably been on 70 or 80 of them of the 100. I found out about Amir through Kip because Kip and Amir, I believe, lived together or were very close to each other in like 2018, 2019. But Amir and I had never met. Like we just kept missing each other until he came to Canada early last year. And finally we got to meet and talk to each other, and it was like, man, we have to wrestle. And then finally it turned around that in Barrie we got to do it. What was funny about the whole story of the character I'm doing at Barrie is like this piece of shit who doesn't want to defend his title. So I literally came out with like a doctor's note saying like, I'm not defending the title. And like I was wearing sweatpants and like just not prepared to wrestle. So I like leave the building and he like jumps me and throws me in the ring and like forces me to defend the title. And then, you know, I beat him and squeak away a win. It was a lot of fun. Not exactly like the quite like, you know, like wrestling banger you would expect from the two of us, but like the story was so much fun.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to bring up a picture here. And I think this is there you are with your Three Pistols Championship, contemplating your match, I'm sure, deep in thought. But another highlight, another accomplishment of your 2024 already has been this here, and becoming a two-time, now let me just get this right, a two-time A1 tag team champion along with your tag team partner, Gabriel Fueza. But what did it mean to you, especially with your long history with that company, to be a two-time champion? And I think that happened maybe only a couple of months ago, the end of March, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, so Alpha One in 2020, the last show before the pandemic, we lost the tag team titles. Obviously, we didn't know we were going into the pandemic. And then Alpha One kind of went away because Ethan Page went to AEW, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen with it. And all of a sudden it popped back up earlier this year, and we got to, you know, kind of return to a place that was one of our, you know, monthly visits. And to be put in a position where we're now in a stable with Shane Saber, who's the alpha male champion, and now we have the tag team title. So we're basically running the place now. And it's such now that now Ethan Page has it set up so that we stream live on YouTube, and because he has this following with AEW, there's, you know, thousands of people tuning in to watch these shows. And it's just, it's really good for Canadian independent wrestling, because I feel like we don't really, for years, we didn't really have anything like that. And now we're kind of being pushed in the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring up that picture again, the Alpha One tag team champions. And if my research is correct, I think that was possibly your 10th tag team championships between with yourself and Gabrielle, so, or thereabouts. But even so, it's into double figures, which is quite impressive. But you know, Fight or Flight, you've had a long career, a long journey career. But what does that mean to you to kind of, you know, have that success in the time that you've been teaming with Gabrielle?
It's good. Yeah, we've accomplished a lot in, I guess, 8-9 years now. We've done pretty much everything we can in Canada and won every single title we can. It means a lot because he's the guy that I came up with. You know, I was in training for about a year and a half, and he had jokingly said he had joined the training, and I was like, man, this guy's really good. And he's like, man, I was also thinking like, this guy's going to steal my spot. But it so happened that he was like, anyone want to give me a ride back to Pickering? And I was, you know, like, I think I was 16 or something, and my dad was driving me. And I was like, oh, we actually drive through there. Like, we can give you a ride. And that turned into us giving him the ride to training every single week. And we just became best friends out of it. So yeah, we ended up teaming early on. We were originally the Candy Kids with Alexia Nicole, the three of us. And as soon as that company folded, we kind of rebranded ourselves as Fight or Flight.
Yeah, absolutely. A great tag team name as well. So much success and a great look between the two of you as well. And another highlight from 2024. Now, I mentioned earlier that my first guest in the month of April was Flash Morgan Webster. And he was only 2 days away from catching a plane and going over to Canada for a tour over there with Mark Andrews, with Danny Luna, who you've got at Attack Pro Wrestling in a couple of weeks' time. But it was this match here, wasn't it? For Destiny, The Clash, Sunday, April the 14th, and it was Fight or Flight with Alexia Nicole versus the Subculture. There you are after the match. I've seen highlights, I've seen clips of this match. It looks like an absolute bang. I think that all six of you had tremendous chemistry, and the action was solid from bell to bell. And I think two kind of trio teams, or two kind of stables that could wrestle every single day and twice on Sundays and not have a bad match. But you must have enjoyed the hell out of that one.
Oh yeah, that was definitely a match that the three of us were like, if we were to have a trios match again, like who would we want to wrestle? And then coincidentally, but Subculture was in Impact at the time, and we're like, oh, that'd be awesome if they could come over and wrestle us. And then finally, it worked out that they could. We never like really had too many trios matches, the three of us. I think the last one we probably had, with the exception of the Subculture match, I think was probably 2019. Like Flores and I have done a lot of tag team stuff, but the three of us together have not done a whole lot. But we travel together and we're always around each other. So we actually have that built-in chemistry. So getting to get in there with the three of them, like for me, Mark Andrews is the guy. Like I grew up with him coming to Smash for, those Progress dates and a bunch of match shows in like 2016, 2017. So getting in there with him is incredible. Danny Luna is a beast. It's super cool to get in there with
awesome,
her.
isn't she?
And then Flash Morgan and I have so many similarities that it was really cool to get in there with him as well.
Absolutely, and I've got to say the color coordination in the gear was pretty cool with the light blue. I don't know if that's a theme with your with the cool kids. I think that's what you're commonly known as, aren't you? But I think the color coordination, the gear was absolutely on point that night. But a match I'm sure you'll remember for a long time, and I'm sure a rematch that you'll be wanting to happen soon. But a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And you mentioned about coming into the business together and some shots of of kind of the early days. There you are with Gabrielle and Nicole and three kids that just want to learn about wrestling and want to kind of train and work their hardest. What are your kind of memories of those early days, especially the three of you? I mean, did you kind of meet fairly early on into your training?
Yeah, so I met Fuerza first, and then Alexia was part of a girls' class that was happening at our school with Taylor Wilde. That was happening for, I think it was like 6 months or something, and then they got integrated into our class. And because we're all similar age and we all like the same kind of wrestling, we all kind of just gravitated towards each other. And then when it came to Fuerza and I being put together as a tag team for the student shows we were doing, they wanted to put Alexia with us because she had hurt her shoulder and she needed to manage somebody. So this is how the Candy Kids were born, which was this character they gave us that were ravers. Mind you, like I'm 17, Alexia's 17, Forrest is like 19. And they give us this raver character where like we're supposed to be a bunch of partiers where none of us party. So we kind of turned it into like a joke and had some fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, you mentioned about you teaming with Gabrielle and starting the team. But here are some pictures. And I think this is possibly a picture from your very first training session, Vaughn. And very young, maybe a little bit unsure of himself. Another early shot there. But
so
what are your memories as far as kind of those early days breaking into the business? Because you would have been very young when you started your training, 14, 15 years old. You maybe had your first match a few years later, 17 maybe. But, were they being so young, kind of learning the business, finding your feet, were they good times, good memories for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't necessarily have many hobbies or played many sports as a kid. So for me, it was wrestling. Like I was in grade 9, 14 years old when I started. And, I was going up every weekend to train with these these like super athletes and these grown men who were, choke slamming me every week. I was coming to school with like my braces, like cutting up my lips and everything. But it was like the best time of my life, like showing up every weekend. And, we would have our ring would get rented out to local shows. So I would show up and help out on those. And I think there's another tweet that I put out recently where with the match where we just had the Subculture show where we wrestled Subculture, that was a venue that I helped out very early on at when I was 14 that had Chris Hero and El Generico and Kevin Owens on it. So I got to meet so many people just in those early years. And I also got to experience so many different parts of the business. Like I was filming shows, I was ringing the bell, I was setting up the ring, I was refereeing shows. Like I did every role I could until I was greenlit to actually start doing matches.
Yeah. Who did you look up to in the business around that time? And were there any inspirations, whether it be, you know, on the bigger promotions, on the TV, or maybe on the independent circuit, or maybe people you were training with. But you know, who were the people you were looking up to and maybe inspired you during those early years?
Yeah, I mean, independent level, I was definitely looking at Generico and Steen, because those were two guys that, when I first started, they were still on the indies and kind of just starting to break out. I think Zane went to NXT, I think in 2011, I want to say, and then Kevin followed in 2014 or something like that. Those two guys for sure. And then in training, I was looking up to guys like Brent Banks, because Brent had started, I think he started in like 06 or something. And I was looking at this guy being like, this guy's the best. And then fast forward years later, I'm traveling to the UK and spending 6 weeks with the guy. So a lot of fond memories from that era.
Absolutely. And you know, you mentioned about having your first matches around the age of 17, but you know, the 17, 18, you seem to have quite a few matches under your belt and a bit of success as well quite early on. You know, was that good for you, being still quite young and new to the business, to know that companies kind of trusted you, and you know, felt like, you know, they could invest in you as a performer even at such a young age?
Yeah, it definitely, I don't know if I even really noticed at the time that I did accomplish so much in that first year. But a lot of it was a tribute to Fuerza and I. Like, we came out of training and nobody really told us what to do. We knew there were all these companies running in Ontario and in Canada, but we didn't really know how to get on them. So we just kind of said, well, let's just go to all of them. Let's just show up to every single one. And then that ended up with us getting on C4, and then Barrie Wrestling, and then, you know, eventually Smash Wrestling, and then winning tag titles. And then it just kind of all went from there.
Yeah, and it's very evident, kind of speaking to you, that that's been your kind of your mindset and your MO from day one, is to kind of branch out and to get to as many places and to be at as many shows as possible, whether performing or helping. And as you've kind of established throughout your career, you know, you've performed for dozens of promotions over the years, and I think that's kind of stood in good stead for you, basically.
Yeah, well, I've always said that, like, you know, I'm not delusional. I look in the mirror, I know I'm 5'8", I know I'm like 170 pounds. I'm not somebody who comes into wrestling 6'4", who's going to be offered all these opportunities. I know I'm going to have to work for absolutely everything, and that's fine, because I will. And I know a lot of people won't, and I'm just the guy who's willing to do it.
Yeah, and thinking back, not necessarily in them early years, but through your career, has there been any kind of pivotal moments, or maybe light bulb moments, or matches or encounters that has really been a bit of a sea change in your career or your mindset with regards to how you approach the business or how you handle yourself within the business? But any light bulb moments or maybe pivotal moments that have helped direct your career?
I mean, I touched on it earlier, but definitely the one where I wrestled Kip for the first time in England, because that changed my perspective on wrestling. Like, I wasn't necessarily sure that was going to be, you know, what I was pursuing full time. But when I had that match and kids were like up against the apron, like screaming and like so into it, I was like, this is what I need to do. Like, I am good at this. Like, that was that moment where I was like, oh, I think I do know what I'm doing. Like, I need to be confident in myself. I mean, that was definitely a moment early on. And then obviously these past 2 years, like getting the opportunity to wrestle all these guys who are coming to Canada, as opposed to just wrestling, you know, other Canadians, being trusted in the position to, you know, wrestle Mustafa when he comes in, to wrestle Trent Seven when he comes in. It's all just kind of like giving me the confidence to prove it. Like, I am good at this, you know, like I'm very self-conscious, like a lot of people, like, and I think a lot of us have that, that thing where we think we get, what is it, imposter syndrome, they call it, right?
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
get
a
it
lot
all
of
the
us,
time.
I think a lot of us in wrestling get that, but we kind of need to remind ourselves, like, no, we are good, and this is where we're meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk a bit about your in-ring style now, because I think many would consider you one of the very best high flyers in Canada. And you know, how would you describe your style? And do you believe that it's maybe changed or modified over the years to the point that you're kind of happy with your style as it is in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, when I started out, I was very generic, babyface high flyer, Hurricane Rana, you know, crossbody type of guy. I think it's varied a little bit because of my body. I mean, certainly wrestling for 14 years, I've definitely taken some injuries and some tolls on my body. So I've tried to position it to be a bit more striky in recent years, you know, throw a suplex in here and there. but I've always looked at my style and tried to kind of do what nobody's doing, you know, because like I would show up to these shows and everybody's doing, you know, an Oz cutter, or everybody's doing, you know, a super kick, and I'm kind of looking at it being like, well, how do I do something nobody's doing? Like that's why I do the Arabian press, Dragon Kid does, because like nobody does it except for Dragon Kid, and like Jeff Hardy did it once. Like I'm just trying to find these things that nobody really does and try to make it my own, you know.
Yeah, but also trying to mix it up so you had a bit of longevity to your
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of high flyers, they do literally crash and burn, you know, quite a young age, and have to kind of find, you know, a different way to look after their body in the ring over time.
Well, that's how the swanton to the back got started, because Jeff Hardy kept talking about his hips, how much they hurt from doing the swanton off the top rope. And then a local guy, Cecil Nix, was like, why don't you try doing the swanton to the back? And then turns out I can land on my feet from it. And it's like, oh, that's a fix right there.
Yeah, what a great idea and a fantastic move, and visually looks absolutely amazing. And as we established, you started training 14 years ago, made your pro wrestling debut 2 or 3 years after that. But what stage do you believe you are in your career at the moment, and where would you like to take it next in terms of taking your career to that next level?
I think, I mean, everybody's goal is to go to Japan. So I think that's probably the immediate thing I need to do. I would love to do a little bit more in the States, but a lot of it has to do with visa issues and crossing for work and whatnot. But I feel like I'm at a very good stage where I'm kind of entering like this point where I'm like very confident what I'm doing, and I guess almost the prime of my career in this. Like, so they always say like you're 32 is when your prime is hit, but most people start when they're 18. I started when I was 14.
Exactly, you start earlier.
Yeah. So I'm kind of at this point now where like I've always looked at like, you know, Jericho and Eddie and all the AJ Styles and Danielson, all these guys who traveled the world before they had this opportunity on television to wrestle. So now I'm at that transition point where I want to get into doing that, you know. Not saying that if, you know, a contract was given to me at 22, I wouldn't have taken it. For sure I would have. But now that I have all this international experience, like I want to be able to, you know, transition into doing more television stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've got Tom Holly Lee watching us live via YouTube. Big up V-Guy and big up Johners. What's your favorite UK promotion that you've wrestled for, and who are your 3 UK wrestlers you'd like to wrestle? Thanks, Tom. But yeah, who are some of your favorite UK promotions and 3 UK wrestlers you'd like to wrestle?
I definitely can't say one UK promotion because I feel like I'll just shoot myself in the foot for bookings. Definitely Riot Cabaret, because they're something incredibly special. I always love wrestling for Progress. I always love wrestling for Attack. God, there's so many. I don't even know. Who else have I worked for? There was one I did last year in England. I really loved working for UPW down in Weymouth. Like it was like a 4-match show with like segments in between, and it was so well run, and like the crowd was incredible. Like there's all these pockets in Europe or in the UK that have so many incredible promotions. It's hard to just pick a few. 3 UK wrestlers. Well, one just got announced today, and that's Michael Oku for sure.
Absolutely, we're going to talk about that in a minute for sure.
Definitely. I'd say Pac. Pac's one of my top 5 of all time. Does he count as a UK wrestler anymore? He's not independent, but
I would say he's still very much an Englishman. Yes.
Yeah. Nico was on my list for a long time, and thankfully I got to do that. Who else is there? Oh, Callum Newman. We wrestled at RCWA, but he hurt his calf like halfway through the match, so we didn't actually get to have the match we wanted. So I would love to work with Callum again, for sure.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that match, and let's bring up the appropriate slide. And it's going to be this show here, the 26th of May. So just a few weeks away. And your match that was announced not long ago, it will be against Michael Oku. And I believe he's still the undisputed Rev Pro British champion. But I think that will be a first-time encounter between yourself and Michael in a one-on-one match. This is going to be Smash Wrestling, and that, like I say, Michael Oku is one of the best independent performers out there, and he's really branching out, getting a lot of opportunities. Like I say, certainly in the UK, but in the States and Canada, further afield, he really is making the name as one of the best independent workers out there. You've got your opportunity on May the 26th. Where's your mind at regarding that match and Michael as an opponent?
Obviously, looking forward to it. I've known Michael since 2018, I think. We met at RCWA because I got a spot in a match because I think he hurt his wrist or something. I can't remember what it was, but he had to cancel the show because he got hurt. I got put in a match with Maverick Mayhew. And then he showed up to the show later on. I got to meet him and say hello. And I think he was probably a year in at the time. I come back in 2019. He's on Rev Pro. He's wrestling Pac. He's on Progress. He's wrestling Gunther. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's like killing it right now. And he has like his whole presentation together, and he has this theme music, and he has incredible merch. I'm like, this guy's something special. But like, obviously he's not the biggest guy, but he puts so much effort into everything else. Like his entrance videos, the merch he puts out. Everything is just so carefully made and put out that it gives us like entire like cool presentation about him. So now, obviously, after the pandemic, to see him, have these matches with Ospreay and to be flown out to do, the Battle of LA and everything, like he's just on an absolute another level. I've wrestled him in like a 6-way, and I wrestled him in like a 10-man tag or something. But to get the singles match, to do it in Toronto, my home city, I'm absolutely delighted. And it's his first time to Canada, so
really. Yeah,
I think so. It's his first time wrestling for Canada. I don't know if it's his first time.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I know he's done a lot of work over in the States, but not so much Canada. But that's going to be an incredible match. I'm just going to bring up that graphic one more time because that is a match to look forward to. And of course, tickets are on sale. Smash-wrestling.com. Go and get your tickets if you're in that neck of the woods, if you want to go and see Michael Oku versus VAUGHN Vertigo. But let me ask you, what's been some of your proudest moments of your wrestling career? And I'm sure there's been many, and we've highlighted quite a few already. A lot of accomplishments, a lot of accolades, a lot of great matches and opponents and opportunities. But any particular proud moments that really stand out to you, Vaughn?
God, there's a lot. It's hard to like think of so many. I mean, definitely that having the balls to go on the first Europe trip. I'm so proud of myself for investing in myself and realizing that was the right thing to do. There's been moments where like Forza and I teamed with like Blue Demon Jr. in the Harborfront Center in Toronto, which is like this really beautiful like 3-story venue with an absolute Mexican legend. God, I feel like a lot of it is recent. Like the Subculture match is really cool to me. Wrestling Mustafa obviously was a really, really big deal. There's a lot. Even during the pandemic, like 2-3 months into it, I'm looking at my friends, realizing like wrestling's not going to be around. Like we have nothing to do, and I had just bought like this new 4K camera, and I had nothing to do with it. And I thought like, why don't we make something for people while the pandemic's happening? So we created this backyard wrestling company called Backyard Pro. But the idea of it was that it was professional wrestlers with alter egos so that they could be in the backyard kind of thing. So it was a very ridiculous project with like Psycho Mike from Canada. And like we had RJ City involved and Josh Alexander as the dancing weapon instead of the walking weapon. We had like a David Arquette cameo. Like it turned into this whole thing during the pandemic that I produced and shot and edited, and it was so much work, but I'm so proud of it because it capitalized on a time where wrestling wasn't happening, and I was able to kind of give people in my area an opportunity to still kind of entertain people. I'm very proud of that for sure.
Didn't you create a YouTube channel that those matches and that footage can be viewed on? Is that right?
I sure did. It was youtube.com/backyardpro.
There we go. And if you go to Vaughn's link tree on any of his socials, I think the link to that YouTube channel is there. But let me ask you and play a bit of devil's advocate here. You said that if you hadn't come over to the UK or done your first tour outside of Canada in 2017, and all the benefits that you've kind of garnered from those various tours, this being your 10th, what sort of pro wrestler do you think you would be now, or where do you think you'd be in the wrestling business without having kind of ventured outside of your own country?
I mean, I think I'd still be wrestling. I just don't think I would be where I am, because the earlier I realized that, staying in one place and just wrestling in Canada isn't going to be enough. It kind of like, I realized there was a glass ceiling very early. Like, as much as I love our scene, we have incredible wrestlers, but the problem is, as the UK scene was for a long time, there wasn't eyes on it, right? Like, nobody's really paying attention to it. And I get it, because if you're an American indie fan today, you have West Coast Pro and House of Glory and GCW and all these shows, and you have AEW now and all these shows happening. Why would you pay attention to what's happening in Canadian wrestling, right? But in doing this and kind of going out and, conquering Europe as I am, I'm trying to bring awareness to what we have going back home, hoping that people will come watch it. Just kind of like what Mike Bailey did, right? Like, he was banned from America. He wasn't able to enter. So he went out to Japan and Europe and absolutely killed it everywhere else. And I think a lot of people started paying attention to what he was doing, and that probably got some eyes on like C4 wrestling and whatnot in Canada and IWS.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if that was the question.
Please continue. Yeah, I was going to say, if there's any young aspiring wrestlers that are watching this, how highly would you recommend to get out there and branch out within their own country, and if they can, branch out outside of their own country? Because obviously we've seen the benefits and the advantages it's given you over the years, and the experience and the growth. But I'm sure you couldn't recommend doing that type of thing to any young aspiring wrestler, or any wrestler for that matter, Vaughn.
Oh, 100%. Like, if you've ever been on like a field trip in like high school where you went with your friends, like, if you went to like California or wherever, like I went to France. I had the time of my life because I was with my friends. Now picture doing that with wrestling and meeting these new people in new scenes and getting to experience, different styles and whatnot. Like, it's the best. Like, I wouldn't be over here if I didn't love doing this,
Yeah, 100%. But before we say goodbye, let's ask you for your socials. So if there's any of my viewers or followers, listeners that want to reach out and learn more about VAUGHN Vertigo, if this is their first opportunity of seeing and hearing from you, where can they learn more about yourself on your socials, my friend? And if it helps, I do have your socials scrolling along the bottom.
Perfect. Sometimes I will say off my socials while I have somebody in a chin lock. So I will say it as, you can follow me on X at VAUGHN Vertigo, on Instagram at VAUGHN Vertigo. I almost said Facebook. Don't follow me on Facebook. X, TikTok, VAUGHN Vertigo, YouTube, VAUGHN Vertigo. And then if you want to look at the Backyard Pro stuff we did during the pandemic, it's very stupid, very silly. Just search Backyard Pro on YouTube and it should come up there. And then, if you want to buy some merch, I have a Big Cartel, which is vaughnvertigo.bigcartel.com. There's also a pro wrestling tees. Just kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Absolutely. We've got some screen grabs here, and of some of the t-shirts, some of the swag on offer. But more importantly, I've got to say that the t-shirt is pretty sweet. Shout out to whoever designed that. And of course, you've got the Shining Wizard beanie there, which you are sporting at this present time. But some pretty cool designs there. And like I said, there's plenty of ways. And you've also brought some merch over to the UK with you.
I sure did. You can buy this hat and you can buy that t-shirt if you come see me if you come see me in Denmark, you see me at the Festival, or you see me at Attack or OTT.
Absolutely. And the way I like to end these shows, but if you've got any parting words to close off this episode of Wrestling with Johners to your fans, your friends, your followers, your family members watching at home, or maybe a future opponent, if you've got any parting words to end this episode of Wrestling with Johners from VAUGHN Vertigo, what would they be?
I'm not sure if I do. I mean, the only thing I can really say is just I'm thankful that people are paying attention and supporting independent wrestling, because it's the best. And if you're somebody who's a WWE fan or an AEW fan, if you've never been to an independent show, what are you doing? Go out and experience it. I don't know anybody who's never been to an independent show who went to an independent show for the first time who was like, that sucked. Everyone's like, this is the best. So
yeah, the indie scene in the UK, Europe, and further afield is red hot at the moment. So we are experiencing, in my opinion, a bit of a boom period with independent wrestling, with pro wrestling in general. The whole scene, the whole landscape is red hot. But the V guy, VAUGHN VERTIGO, I want to thank you so much for being an awesome guest on episode 362, and hopefully see you at a show or two. But enjoy the rest of your UK and European tour, and thank you so much for being an awesome guest.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.